A neighbor saw the trio and called 911. Officers got there quickly and arrested the 3 suspects. One neighbor showed us video from her security cameras. You can see one of the 3 suspects trying to get into her car.
Green Bay police reporting they have captured a teen they believe was involved in the theft of several items, including guns. 17-year-old Jordan Murdoch was taken into custody around 8 this evening without incident. He had been considered armed and dangerous.
Records show Brew is also wanted right now on a 7-count felony warrant stemming from a January case involving a gun, a stolen car, drugs, and resisting police. Brew is a convicted felon.
Parents are outraged after learning that a school custodian in the southwest suburbs is accused of recording middle school girls in a locker room. 27-year-old Ryan Thompson was arrested on Monday.
Gwinnett police say they have more than a dozen warrants out for 22-year-old Andrew Mosley, who they say has played the same game with many other people.
He needs to be caught.
Investigators say Mosley poses as a legitimate tree cutter, and after receiving half or full payment, sometimes well over $1,000 up front, he starts the job, then disappears.
This afternoon, the sheriff tells us that Jeffrey Falsley of Pinellas County got into an argument with his mom because she would not buy him donuts. He became enraged. That's when deputies explained he killed his mom's fiance, Daniel Kowicki, who was a registered sex offender. Deputies rushed to the home along 80th Way North. Falsley began shooting, and in a hail of bullets, Deputy Michael Ficcicelli was hit in the leg.
Entra por la calle Libertad y Panamericana. Avanza, avanza, ya estamos adentro en el agua. Ya.
train in Dutchess County may have thought they were safe from the snow while standing on the platform, but that was until an Amtrak train
come on, man.
plowed through, and we really mean plowed. It pushed an avalanche of snow up and off the tracks and right onto those passengers. This is in Rhinecliff. The video was posted online yesterday.
That's just so not fair. Can we see it one more time? Here comes that train. Those people like, oh, we're nice and warm, we're nice and dry, we're going to hop on this warm train, and then that.
Wonderful young lady. I'm fun, outgoing. I'm more of a, try to stay focused type of guy, not I joke around, but she always seemed to brought, the best out of me. So it's tough.
It's 5:04 right now. A talented boxer shot and killed in West Baltimore this morning. City police are looking for the person responsible. This happened early Wednesday on Pennsylvania Avenue in West Baltimore. Police believe Montel Pridgett's death stems from some kind of a fight that he'd been having. He is 24 years old. He was known as Telly, and he planned to turn pro. He had been training at Upton Boxing Center.
Telly don't bother nobody, he mind his business, nobody don't bother him, he don't bother them. But, for that to happen, and so many people know him.
Yeah, you've heard of the newly crowned IBF lightweight junior champion Gervonta Tank Davis. He's also out of Upton Boxing Center, and he had been helping Pridgett work with his career.
A lawmaker in Oklahoma has been charged with child prostitution. State Senator Ralph Shorty was found in a motel room with a 17-year-old boy. The Republican has also been charged with transporting a minor for prostitution and engaging in prostitution within 1,000 feet of a church.
Police say they found the lawmaker with the teen earlier this month after the boy's father called them. The dad told them his son had a history of drug use and soliciting sex on Craigslist.
Trip this. Cut the motherfuckers off the leash. It's been a week since my dogs ate. Let them eat. See, I'ma tell you up front and uncut. See, I'ma stand up, nigga. I'm a man up, nigga. Questions to interview me, but guess what? I've got nothing to say, mate.
New this morning, offensive flyers showing up at the University of Maryland College Park campus.
UMD police are looking for the person responsible for the white nationalist flyers with messages like this saying a notice to all white Americans. It is your civic duty to report any and all illegal aliens. The flyers call them criminals and claims that America is a white nation. Many students were upset by the message, saying that this does not represent the diversity and culture on their campus.
You see things like that and, it kind of brings you back to a time where, minorities weren't really appreciated and weren't even on this campus.
To know that there were people out there, like white nationalist people on campus putting those things, it just made, it's just really scary.
In a statement, University President Wallace Lowe says, in short, as a community, we stand for excellence, diversity, and inclusion. We stand against all forms of ignorance and hate.
This is not a time to be quiet, even though these crimes are really designed to make us fearful and to silence us.
Those words from a local pastor. She's part of a push to put pressure on the General Assembly to enact a hate crimes law right here in Indiana.
It comes 4 months after vandals spray-painted racial slurs on a Bean Blossom church. The bill would give judges the ability to hand down a tougher sentence if a crime is motivated by a victim's race, religion, or other factors. And there are ways that this bill could be brought back up for discussion right here in the State House, although it appears unlikely at this point. The author of the bill telling me today that she has no plans to bring it back up this year, although she's keeping the door open for future discussions as soon as next year.
And to another Fox News alert, a manhunt intensifying for a wanted kidnapper who robbed a woman and then stuffed her in the trunk of her own car. Surveillance video out of Birmingham, Alabama, look at her right there, captures the moment that the woman burst out of the trunk and escaped. After jumping from the trunk, she frantically runs inside the gas station, calls 911. Luckily, she wasn't seriously injured.
Now we're learning that more than 200,000 Floridians could lose their food stamps. A new bill that's already passed 2 House committees would change the eligibility requirements. It would limit food stamps to families that earn less than 130% of the federal poverty limit, or $2,600 a month for a family of 4.
The Trump administration has unveiled its budget outline, and we're taking a close look at the numbers today. The America First outline, as they call it, appears to be putting an emphasis on the military and keeping the country safe, with spending increases planned for defense, homeland security, and veterans affairs. But significant spending cuts are planned in several cabinet departments and federal agencies, including a 29% spending slash at the State Department, a 31% cut at the EPA. Labor and agriculture will also see cuts of more than 20%. This outline is only a blueprint of the budget. The Trump administration is expected to release its full budget in May.
I am sending Congress a budget that rebuilds the military.
President Donald Trump has already outlined where his priorities lie.
And calls for one of the largest increases in national defense spending.
Statements from the campaign trail provide the basis for where he wants the $54 billion of cuts to come.
By finding greater savings and efficiencies across the federal government, we're going to do more with less.
Discretionary spending is 1/3 of the federal budget. It doesn't cover major programs like Social Security or government-provided health care. There will be big cuts to the State Department, which will slash foreign aid. Environmental programs are also at risk. The budget would also mean significant job losses in the federal workforce. That impacts communities across the U.S., not just in and around the capital, Washington.
The federal government's footprint in rural America, particularly west of the Mississippi, is very, very substantial. And of course, these are areas that voted for Mr. Trump.
Donald Trump also made this promise to the black community and those who live in America's troubled inner cities.
What do you have to lose?
But government housing programs and urban development could be cut significantly. Helping around 5 million Americans, that could mean rent rises, people being forced out of their homes and struggling to get on the housing ladder, all in areas the president promised to help.
These programs help the vulnerable, the dispossessed, those who, if they don't get this help, have the potential for causing disruptions in our society or moral dilemmas for the American citizens.
This so-called America First budget will be controversial, but here's the problem. For the last 10 years, presidential budgets have failed to get through Congress. Donald Trump has done things differently from day one, but there is nothing to suggest a Republican-controlled Congress will follow his lead. So a final budget is likely to look a lot different.
A judge has just blocked our executive order on travel and refugees coming into our country from certain countries. The order he blocked was
So clearly to Judge Watson, we heard it in his questions this morning, but I think we could see it in black and white in his order. He was very focused on a lot of what had been said beforehand to say that it couldn't just be cured by simply inserting a lot of neutral language and then asking everybody to pretend that it didn't happen.
and unprecedented judicial overreach. The law and the Constitution give the president the power to suspend immigration when he deems, or she, fortunately it will not be Hillary she. The need for my executive order is clear. I was elected to change our broken and dangerous system and thinking in government that has weakened and endangered our country and left our people defenseless. And I will not stop fighting for the safety of you and your families, believe me.
Well, that's why I don't think it's good policy. I think it sends a message that sounds like this is a ban based on a religion. One of your previous guests said it would be unconstitutional to have a ban based on national origin. That's just wrong. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld bans based on national origin. Historically, we've always had restrictions on people coming from particular countries. The issue is if all those countries are predominantly Muslim countries, whether that pushes it over to an establishment of religion and discrimination against religion. That's a difficult question. The national origin question is not a difficult question.
I am satisfied that President Trump was never wiretapped by former President Obama. It's a terrible thing for him to say. He ought to apologize to the American public. He ought to apologize to President Obama for not telling the truth.
Every intelligence agency reports to you. Why not immediately go to them and gather evidence to support that?
Because I don't want to do anything that's going to violate any strength of an agency. You know, we have enough problems.
In an interview, President Trump stuck to his story that he was wiretapped, or something like it.
Wiretap covers a lot of different things. I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks.
So wiretap covers a lot of things. That's what the president is saying now. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's similar to the, I don't know, shall we say gentle redefining of the word wiretap that White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer started 2 days ago.
He doesn't really think that President Obama went up and tapped his phone personally. I think, but I think there's no question that the Obama administration, that there were actions about surveillance and other activities that occurred in the 2016 election.
Now, keeping him honest, Spicer had originally said the president's tweets speak for themselves. Now he's speaking for them, redefining them in a way. So this is the new narrative from the White House, namely that when the president was tweeting about President Obama wiretapping his phones at Trump Tower, he wasn't really tweeting about President Obama wiretapping his phones at Trump Tower. Keeping him honest, one thing is clear. No matter how the White House now would like you to define wiretapping, President Trump did repeatedly accuse the former president of the United States of ordering the tapping, calling him a bad or sick guy like Nixon, McCarthy. And though President Trump could simply release whatever information led him to this belief, he has not done that. Maybe he has none, or maybe doesn't want to release it. He also hasn't told the Department of Justice to release whatever information it has on any warrants applied for under the Obama administration regarding Trump Tower. could do that, but he hasn't.
So this sort of blew up the internet earlier today. Some of McDonald's Twitter followers woke up to a mysterious tweet. The post called President Trump a, quote, disgusting excuse of a president and said it wanted former President Barack Obama back. It also commented on the size of Mr. Trump's hands.
Yeah, well, the post was deleted shortly after, and hours later, the company tried to explain, claiming its account was compromised. McDonald's says it's investigating the incident with Twitter.
This comes from the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings. We're told that retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, was paid more than $33,750 by Russia's state-run broadcaster, RT TV Russia, for a speech in Moscow in December 2015. This from the top Democrat, Representative Cummings, on the House Oversight Committee. The U.S. intelligence community has long assessed that RT is a propaganda tool of the Kremlin, writing in its January report on Russian interference in the U.S. election that the organization had participated in disinformation campaigns aimed at the U.S. Flynn had previously acknowledged the speaking engagement, telling multiple news outlets in July and August of last year that he received money for the speech in Moscow in December of 2015, but he declined to state the amount, saying, and this is key, that the source of the funds was actually his U.S. Speakers Bureau, not the Russian broadcaster, which, as we mentioned, U.S. intelligence agencies describe as an instrument of the Russian government. So Wolf, a couple key issues here. One, as a legal matter, if General Flynn, and you remember he was the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, in light of that position and being a former military officer, one has to report that he received income from any foreign entity and that it came from a foreign entity. What appears to be the case here is that in his public comments he has said, oh no, I was paid by my Speaker's Bureau, but we now know from these documents obtained by the House Oversight Committee that in fact the money came from Russia, Russia's state TV broadcaster, RT. We asked General Flynn's spokesman for comment on this. It said that he reported the speech to the DIA. I asked specifically, did he report this money coming from Russia, from this Russian state broadcaster, and they had no contact. They had no comment. This will be a legal issue if he did not report that income on a security clearance form. It also is an administrative issue for the Army if he did not report this to the Army. Not a legal issue for them, not a violation of the law, but it would violate their guidelines for retired military officers. Those are open questions now. We are waiting for comment, and this is one thing that Elijah Cummings is seeking. He's saying, did you report this income? We don't have an answer to that question.
Come on, Maria. This is the
it's
obvious...
It's all politicized.
No, Jeff Sessions went before the United States Senate, raised his hand, took an oath to tell the truth, and proceeded to not tell them about 2 meetings he had with the Russian ambassador, one of which took place at the Republican convention.
Why shouldn't he have a meeting with the Russian ambassador?
At the Republican convention.
But why shouldn't he have a meeting with... I mean, this whole Russian narrative fires me up because I don't understand where you're going with it. So in other words, senators and governors and, you know, anybody of any power is not supposed to meet with Russian counterparts?
The narrative is pretty simple. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were in cahoots during the election.
It's just not true.
So all of those sources from the FBI are they're much.
What sources from the FBI?
Making it up.
It was very clear. Even Clapper, former CIA director, said there is no evidence of any collusion between Donald Trump and his administration and the Russian government.
Well, you know what? And the investigation.
Clapper said it.
That's why we need an independent investigation.
The Pentagon is weighing the deployment of 1,000 additional troops to Syria's north. A U.S. military official has been quoted as saying that the deployment will be part of provisional plans drawn up by the U.S. Defense Department to fight Daesh. The deployment needs to be approved by Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, that is, and President Donald Trump. Last week, the U.S. stationed 200 Marines along with an artillery battery near the Syrian city of Raqqa. Washington has already deployed hundreds of troops in Syria without the country's consent. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has described the U.S. forces in Syria as invaders. The U.S. and its allies have also been carrying out unauthorized airstrikes on Syria since 2014.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it can help if that's the way Assad is seeing this move. Obviously, if that's the case, he hasn't been consulted, and I doubt the Russians have been consulted, and they have been doing a good job of trying to mop these guys up. So, you know, it's one thing if Trump's all talking, you know, let's get together with Russia. Well, this is where we need to do it right here, and we just need to start having some territorial integrity, respect for Syria as a country that can decide its own, you know, leaders based on elections, which Assad was reelected recently. You know, so it's just, again, it's just the U.S. basically acting like a hegemon in the Middle East, and comes on the same day where they, you know, basically criticize this thing that, you know, it criticizes Israel. So, you know, put it all together, and it doesn't look too hot, right?
A neighbor saw the trio and called 911. Officers got there quickly and arrested the 3 suspects. One neighbor showed us video from her security cameras. You can see one of the 3 suspects trying to get into her car.
Green Bay police reporting they have captured a teen they believe was involved in the theft of several items, including guns. 17-year-old Jordan Murdoch was taken into custody around 8 this evening without incident. He had been considered armed and dangerous.
Records show Brew is also wanted right now on a 7-count felony warrant stemming from a January case involving a gun, a stolen car, drugs, and resisting police. Brew is a convicted felon.
Parents are outraged after learning that a school custodian in the southwest suburbs is accused of recording middle school girls in a locker room. 27-year-old Ryan Thompson was arrested on Monday.
Gwinnett police say they have more than a dozen warrants out for 22-year-old Andrew Mosley, who they say has played the same game with many other people. He needs to be caught. Investigators say Mosley poses as a legitimate tree cutter, and after receiving half or full payment, sometimes well over $1,000 up front, he starts the job, then disappears.
This afternoon, the sheriff tells us that Jeffrey Falsley of Pinellas County got into an argument with his mom because she would not buy him donuts. He became enraged. That's when deputies explained he killed his mom's fiance, Daniel Kowicki, who was a registered sex offender. Deputies rushed to the home along 80th Way North. Falsley began shooting, and in a hail of bullets, Deputy Michael Ficcicelli was hit in the leg.
Entra por la calle Libertad y Panamericana. Avanza, avanza, ya estamos adentro en el agua.
Train Dutchess County may have thought they were safe from the snow while standing on the platform, but that was until an Amtrak train
come on, man.
plowed through, and we really mean plowed. It pushed an avalanche of snow up and off the tracks and right onto those